Today I want to talk about the affirmative action because it is something that strikes me about America today. Of course, I know the history and why it was introduced, but I just cannot make my peace with it today because I think it is something that doesn't belong in America, and it's something that stands in opposition to a lot of things that America should stand for, like freedom, equality, limited government, justice, fairness, and the idea that people should only be judged by the content of their character. Hi everybody, this is Cat with Two Tails. Welcome to my channel. My biggest objection against the affirmative action is that it's discriminatory and racist, and it goes against everything that America should stand for. It goes against the American idea of equality before the law and that all men are created equal. As it turns out, for the American government that allows affirmative action to continue, all men are not created equal. In private institutions, the affirmative action is just morally wrong, because a private institution has a right to accept or hire anyone they like. But for the government and its institutions, I think affirmative action should be illegal and it's unconstitutional. People usually don't see how the affirmative action is actually racist and discriminatory. They think that it's fair to give people from groups that used to be oppressed a head start. But what they don't realize is that if you give a head start to people from certain groups, you have to logically held back people from other groups like males and whites and Asians. And so today a lot of Asian men and young men are actually discriminated against and held back when it comes to universities and jobs. And so today it's people from these groups who are discriminated against based on their gender or race. So you still have discrimination, it's just the groups that are being discriminated against changed. How is it even legal for a government institution or organization to ask for your race or ethnicity during a hiring process or application process? I thought that America was the country with most freedom in the world and most equality of opportunity in the world. Well, maybe not so much. If in my home country an employer or university asked for your race or ethnicity, the outrage would be up through the roof. For many people in America, the affirmative action and diversity laws is actually a proof that America is trying to cure racism and discrimination. But for me, affirmative action is a symbol of racism and discrimination. It reminds me of numerous clauses in Nazi Germany and other European countries in the past, where limitations were put on the number of Jewish students, for example, that could be accepted to university, not only because of anti-Semitism, but also because Jewish students did well. What's the difference between that and the way the Asian students, for example, are treated today? Why do they have to score so much higher on SAT tests than other groups just because they are good students and they do well? Well, today they are actually underrepresented at Ivy League schools, for example, because they have been discriminated against for so long. But it's not racist just against the groups that do well, like Asian Americans who are being held back, but it's also racist towards the group that it's supposed to help, because it's very condescending. It's like saying to them that they wouldn't get in if it wasn't for affirmative action. So as a woman, for example, I don't want anybody to give me a job just because I'm a woman. I want to get a job because I deserve it, not because someone took pity on me or because they thought that they need more diversity in their institution. Another problem with the affirmative action is that you cannot determine a group that was the most discriminated against or has the most grievances. But even if you could, that doesn't mean that all individuals from that group or their families were affected by that. Also, institutional racism and restrictions on any group based on gender or ethnicity ended a long time ago. The young generation today didn't even experience it. So why do we still have laws based on what happened in the past? And on a personal note, when people justify the affirmative action by pointing to slavery or the discrimination that happened in the 50s and 60s, to me as a European, it doesn't make any sense. Most people in a lot of European countries, including mine, were serfs just 200 years ago, and serfdom was, in a lot of places like the Eastern Europe, was as bad as slavery. Then during the Second World War, the Nazis perceived Slavs as, at best, second-class citizens, and they wanted to enslave them. And then we had communism in one half of Europe up until 90s, where again, if you didn't belong to certain master class, like the working class or the poor peasant class, you were discriminated against. If you were middle class, you couldn't get into university, and you couldn't get certain jobs. And even today, I'm sure that as an immigrant and as somebody from a Slavic country or post-communist country, a lot of people in Western Europe or in the United States can look down on me, but that doesn't mean that I deserve any special treatment to get things. It is my responsibility and my hard work and what I make of myself that will bring me success. Also, what about that idiotic notion that public institutions should be diverse in order to reflect population? Why? Why, as a woman, for example, should I care that the majority of pilots are male, or if I go to a hospital where the majority of doctors are male? All I care about is that they are good pilots and good doctors. It would only bother me if I knew that women couldn't study or do whatever they wanted, but they can, so why would that bother me? There are no legal restrictions on women to study or do whatever they want, so why should I care? What kind of snowflakes have we become? My last point is that the affirmative action and diversity laws are obviously bad for the economy and for companies, because as a university or as a company, you should hire the best people. Merit should be the only criteria. If you choose based on anything else, then it can have, and it does have, bad consequences for the performance of the company and of the society in general. And if it's only about success and performance, that's still okay. If you hire a historian who is worse than somebody else just because he's from a minority group, then you can probably live with that. But what about fields like medicine, research, or engineering? In those areas, hiring applicants based on anything else than merit can have life and death implications. Now, some people can argue that the affirmative action may have been necessary in the past and in the limited time and space, like in the South in the 60s and 70s, after the segregation and discrimination of the African American ended, and the Supreme Court ruled that it was constitutional for the first 25 years for the first generation after the segregation. Some people like myself can say that the affirmative action is always wrong under any circumstances because it violates the ideas of equality and equality before the law, and because, for example, I as a libertarian argue that the government should only grant you negative rights, not positive rights. It is 50 years after the discrimination of the blacks in the United States ended, and I don't think you can prove that there is any institutional racism in the United States now. Also, I think that the problem of racism in American society is overblown by media and the left. I also think that there is absolutely no need for the affirmative action to be extended to women and other minorities. And you will always have racism and sexism and xenophobia in every society to a certain degree, but I don't believe you can cure that with preferential treatment, which in my opinion only creates more problems and more tensions and makes the tensions worse. These are my main objections to the affirmative action. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and see you next time.